Hi, and welcome back to this video series on the Common Rule, Habits of Purpose for an Age of Distraction. The Common Rule is a book about 8 daily and weekly habits designed to form us in the love of God and neighbor. And this video series is a guide to reading the book, discussing the concepts with your community, and most importantly, practicing the habits together. In this episode, we're going to be talking about daily habit number 2, a meal a day with others. The question we're going to be asking in this habit is, what is the center of gravity of our daily routine? Is it our work schedules? Is it the kids' activities? Is it our general busyness or something else? And we're going to suggest that ordering life around the table, making the table our center of gravity, is a way of actually making communal life our center of gravity. When my wife and I bought our first house in Richmond, the house we still live in, she tried to convince me that we should buy this perfect, long, vintage teakwood dining table. It had popped up online, and it was on sale by some local Art Deco dealer who was selling everything and closing the business. Now, it's the kind of table that takes up a lot of space, and it has this grain that calls attention to itself. It begs to be the center of the room. And at first I balk. I try to point out gently that this table, despite being on sale and actually really, really good price, would nonetheless cost about 10% of our already shoestring renovation budget. But she was adamant, pointing out that, well, this was the kind of table that everyone gathers around. This is the kind of table the family sits at, so it was worth the expense. Now, of course, we bought it, and of course, she was right. The table quickly became the centerpiece to build the rest of the house around, and our family of 6 eats there every day, and we can insert leaves into it to extend it to fit 15, 16 people for gatherings. I didn't have words for it at the time, but I now see that what my wife, Lauren, did was argue for a center of gravity for our household space, which, by the way, is worth way more than 10% of any renovation budget, because the table is where life happens. It's where a household learns to love. Think through all the ways that the values of love are communicated over food. We serve each other. We clean up after each other. We take turns. We share. We praise and compliment. We express gratitude. We tell stories. We ask questions. We listen. Generations of Christians have described the household as a school of love. Now, the point is that what's going on there is not just people who happen to live together and interact with each other and sleep in proximity, but it's a kind of formation. We are learning to love. And this is true whether you live alone, with roommates, or in a family. The point is that our routines are built around something. And the exhortation to build them around a common table is actually an exhortation out of the individualist life and into the communal life. Now, you might be thinking that this is a kind of inward habit because it's all about the household or the family. No. One of the things that's actually so important about the table is the extra chair. You know, I can't remember, for example, the last time someone who did not know Jesus took me up on an invitation to come to church. But I do know that last month at our neighborhood small group dinner, we had 5 or 6 neighbors who don't know Jesus come and eat with us. And I really think that in our modern moment, the table is going to be the frontier of evangelism. The table is not only the place where we build community with the insiders, it's also the place where we welcome the outsiders in. Now, practicing this habit really depends on where you are. If you're a family dinner is the obvious choice. There are few household rhythms more formative than a family dinner. If you're single, first, let me acknowledge that this might actually be a painful habit for you to consider. You might be sitting there thinking how much you wish you could have a family dinner. My suggestion for single people or maybe people with roommates is just to think about eating maybe lunch in a public place. Maybe that's going to a common room at work or a cafeteria. Just trying to invite community into that moment. And again, whether you're practicing this habit in a family or in a roommate context, remember, the most beautiful part of this table habit is inviting someone else into it. So think about how your rhythms of eating can become ways to draw the neighbor in. So that's the idea behind the daily habit of 1 meal a day with others. As always, here's your fact to ponder, your question to discuss, and your habit to practice. Fact: 42% of meals in America are now eaten alone, and that number is on the rise. So just think about how beautifully countercultural it is to eat a meal a day with others and invite people into that. Your question for discussion is this: how does your relationship to food affect your relationship to community, for better or for worse? Now, your habit to practice this week is one meal a day with others. So look for that time and try to eat at least one meal a day in community and see what happens. Over the course of the next week, remember, you're going to be reading about daily habit number 3, which is an hour with your phone off. And when you come back, we'll be talking about that habit. Until then, remember, your habits will never change God's love for you, but God's love for you can and should change your habits.